Excerpt from Satirical History of Pennsylvania. New all too true blue alternative state histories. 1681. William Penn gets land from the King of England. The land we now know as the state of Pennsylvania was granted to William Penn by the King of England in 1681. The king named it Pennsylvania, which is Latin for Penn's Woods, for William's father. William was embarrassed, thinking that people would probably assume he had named it after himself. In 1682, Penn founded a colony on this land. It was originally intended as a refuge for Quakers, who were being brutally persecuted in Massachusetts by the Puritans. The Puritans wanted religious freedom for themselves, but they were less interested in tolerating religions that differed from their own. Here is Penn, when he found out that he would have a great-great-grandson named Sean, who would become a Hollywood star. Penn said, "What's a Hollywood star? Is that some sort of haywire starfish or what?" 1682, Mennonite invasion. On finding out that William Penn planned on practicing religious tolerance in his new colony, many Mennonite families arrived there from Germany and settled in a place called Germantown. It was either there or Funkytown, and they chose the former. Here's a group of Mennonite girls shortly after their arrival in Pennsylvania. This is a full-color photograph, but they were dressed in black and white. 1750, Benjamin Franklin flies a stingray. Everybody thinks Benjamin Franklin flew a kite to prove that Pennsylvanians were not afraid of being electrocuted, but this assumption is wrong in two important particulars. One, it wasn't a kite, it was a stingray. Second, crafty old Ben displayed his perspicacity by getting his friend Nikola Edison to do it. Here's Ben supervising Nikola. 1776, Declaration of Interdependence. In 1766, in Philadelphia, Jane Addams, Benjamin Franklin, and a few other people, whose names escape me, decided that everybody depends on everyone else. No man is an island. Neither is any nation an island, except the ones that are literally islands, like England and Tahiti. So these people formulated a Declaration of Interdependence. Once they got that over with, they repaired to the festive board to celebrate with a repast worthy of kings and commoners. The ale flowed freely, too, if memory serves. Here are Jane and Ben and the boys talking it over. Jane dressed as a man because they wouldn't have let her in otherwise, in that era of gender prejudice. 1777, 1778, Washington and his buddies vacation at Valley Forge. Tired out from all the marching and bored with the staff meetings in connection with the Revolutionary War, George of the Jungle Washington took some of his buddies on an extended vacation to Valley Forge. When not soaking in the saunas there, they learned the manly art of blacksmithing. Here they are, leaving on vacation, telling the others to stay behind and mind the store. 1791 to 1794, Whiskey Rebellion. The soldiers who had been left behind to brave the chill of winter kept warm for a time, drinking corn squeezins. When they ran out, they threatened to take their muskets and go home if Washington didn't provide them with some more hooch. Here's Washington riding in for a party to see if they will settle for cheap rum. 1812, British Invasion Redux. When the British agreed that their former colonies in America were the victors of the Revolutionary War and promised them their independence, they were actually holding their hands behind their backs, crossing their fingers. The British tried again to take back control of the country in the War of 1812. Oliver Dukes of Hazzard Perry fought in Pennsylvania during that exercise at the Battle of Lake Erie. Here's Perry, pointing out to his men the fact that the enemy has a cannon. 1850, Camptown Raisins. Born in 1826 in Lawrenceville, today a Pittsburgh neighborhood, Stephen Foster aimed to be the first professional American songwriter, and he achieved that goal. One of his most well-known songs, Camptown Raisins, was set in Pennsylvania, in Camptown of all places, to be precise. Camptown rocketed up the charts in 1850. Among other songs Foster wrote, which are still very familiar to many moderns, are My Kentucky Old Folks Home, official state song of Kentucky. Old Fogies at Home, Swanee River, a version of which is the official state song of Florida. Oh, Susanna, won't you dry up? Beautiful Lemur, and I Dream of Jeannie with a light brown mustache. Foster died young at 37 in 1864. Here he is, striking a pose in a Pittsburgh park as Pete Seeger plays Swanee River on the banjo. 1859, Titusville Titan. In 1859, Jed Clampett was out tramping around looking for some food when he took a pot shot at a duck-billed platypus, and instead of hitting the cute little thing, misfired and sent some dirt flying. The bullet went just deep enough to hit an oil well, and the black gold came gushing out of the ground. This was near Titusville. Here's what happened when some practical joker threw a bunch of vinegar on the oil well. Remember, oil and vinegar don't mix. 1863, Gettysburg Addresses. To show his support for the Union troops, Abraham Martin John Lincoln traveled by train to Gettysburg to deliver all the mail addressed to those long sufferers, even though most of it was junk mail and bills. The most interesting thing about the event was that Honest Abe was famished on arrival and ate 4 scones and 7 ears of corn before embarking on his postal mission. In an aside to one of the soldiers, just before commencing with his task, Mr. Lincoln said, 4 scones and 7 years ago, I was famished. Here's Abe thinking about this idea of delivering addressed mail to the Gettysburg troops while some scalawag is trying to teach him how to sing Dixie. Note that former Minnesota Vikings coach Bud Grant sits at Abe's right. 1889, Jonestown Flood. On a day otherwise like any other in 1889, Andrew Carnegie, drunk on scotch, pulled the plug on his robber baron-sized bathtub above Johnstown. The released water spilled out like mad in a raging torrent, flowing down the hill and into the valley, scouring the town's houses clean. It was a lot of fun for all involved, as is easy to see from this holograph. 1912. Indians defeat the military. In 1876, the Indians defeated the Army at the Little Bighorn, not as some think at the Big Bighorn, in a game of polo. In 1890, the Army turned the tables on the Indians and trounced them in a rigged competition on the rifle range. Then in 1912, Carlisle, Pennsylvania, Indian School came off victorious in a football game over the team fielded by the Army. This gridiron rivalry played out in West Point, California, neutral ground. The Carlisle team featured the athlete of the century, and beyond, Jim Thorpe, great-grandson of Black Hawk. They were also coached by Glenn Scobie Pop Warner, who went on to cartoon fame as Scooby-Doo. The game was not close. Even though the Army team had future United States President Dwight D. Eisenhower and Omar Tank Bradley on it, Carlisle won 27-6. A wipeout, a massacre, you might even say. Here's Jan Thorpe tackling a giant sausage, which would later provide lunch for the team, while Coach Pop Warner tries to trip him with a wire, an early example of tough love. 1935, Smedley's Racket. Pennsylvania native Smedley Darlington Butler, who was the highest-ranking Marine at the time, published a small book entitled War is a Racket in 1935. In this book, Butler, who was born during the year of our Lord 1881, Westchester, Pennsylvania, of course, compared warfare to a badminton racket. Here he is contemplating the birdie used in badminton and wondering if he can compare it to the space shuttle somehow. 1953, Jonas Salk invents water polo. In 1953, Jonas Salk of the University of Pittsburgh invented water polo, which is a good way to get exercise. To prove the benefits of water polo, here's a guy who is still fit and active, even though he's apparently 70 years old. Pretty much ancient, in other words. 1960s and 1970s, TSOP. In the 1960s and 1970s, TSOP was a thing. It stands for The Sound of Philadelphia. Some of the artists who pioneered this sound were from Philly, Philadelphia for short. Among them were the Delphonics, the OJs, the Spinners, and the Stylistics. Here's the last named group when they appeared on the Lawrence Welk Show. Lawrence really dug those cats, crooning their hit song, Tiptoe Through the Tulips. 1978, The Deer Hunter. Much of the movie, The Deer Hunter, was set in Clanton, Pennsylvania. A bunch of no-names are in it, though. Robert De Niro, whose name means Bobby Money in Spanish, Meryl Lynch Streep, Christopher I'm Walking, and John Gentle. 1979, 3 Mile Island. In 1979, the Keystone State erected 4 meteor catchers on 3 Mile Island, just in case some meteors fell on the Pennsylvania soil. Here you can see a picture of this marvel of science, scanned from the retina of a migrating bird, which happened to be passing over the location at the perfect time for a photo op. We don't know what kind of bird it was that was passing by, possibly a pigeon, Arctic tern, or pterodactyl. 1993, Groundhog Day. In 1993, the movie Groundhog Day, which was set in Pennsylvania, in Philadelphia and Punxsutawney, was released. In 1993, the movie Groundhog Day, which was set in Pennsylvania, in Philadelphia and Punxsutawney, was released. In 1993, the movie Groundhog Day, which was set in Pennsylvania, Philadelphia and Punxsutawney, was released.